You can support me by turning on notifications, subscribing to my channel, and liking the video. Waiting for your comments. Black Dahlia. Hollywood's unsolved murder mystery in the crisp dawn of January 15, 1947. A discovery was made in a vacant Los Angeles lot that would strike horror into the heart of America and transform an otherwise obscure young woman into one of Hollywood's most iconic symbols of tragedy. Elizabeth Short, a 22-year-old aspiring actress posthumously known as the Black Dahlia, was found brutally murdered and dismembered, her remains posed with unsettling precision. The crime scene savagery and theatrics stunned both the public and the authorities, launching a frenzied media storm that lingered for months and ultimately cemented the case as one of the most infamous unsolved murders in American history. Born in Boston on July 29, 1924, Elizabeth Short was the third of 5 daughters. Her father's disappearance in her youth reshaped the family's fate, contributing to early instability in her life. Eventually, Elizabeth, with dreams of stardom, moved to California, where she divided her time between various cities, including Santa Barbara and Los Angeles. Her style, dark hair, elegant attire, and the rumored preference for black clothing drew some comparisons to the 1946 film The Blue Dahlia, inspiring press outlets to coin the moniker Black Dahlia after her death. This naming, while superficially glamorous, belied the stark reality of Elizabeth's struggles. Drifting from job to job, often living at friends' apartments or cheap hotels, she was hardly the Hollywood success story she'd hoped to become. The morning of her body's discovery, local housewife Betty Berzinger was out for a walk in the Leimert Park area when she saw what she first believed to be a discarded mannequin. On closer inspection, she realized with horror that she was looking at a human corpse, severed at the waist, drained of blood, and arranged in a macabre display. The victim's face bore deep cuts from the corners of her mouth, creating a nightmarish Glasgow smile. The meticulous nature of the body's positioning, arms raised overhead, legs spread, implied the killer wanted to create maximum shock for anyone who found her. Despite the gruesome detail of the crime, no immediate clues at the scene pointed to the perpetrator. A single, gory message lingered. The murderer had skillfully dissected the body, indicating possible surgical knowledge. The Los Angeles Police Department quickly identified the victim as Elizabeth Short through fingerprint analysis, which matched records from a prior arrest. The shocking details of her death, combined with her youthful, photogenic appearance, caught the attention of newspapers far beyond L.A. The sensational press coverage was practically instantaneous. Outlets like the Los Angeles Herald-Express and the Los Angeles Examiner ran lurid headlines describing the Black Dahlia as a mysterious seductress. They printed bold accusations about her private life, painting her as a reckless coquette or, alternately, a struggling ingenue trapped in Hollywood's underbelly. Rumors surfaced of her alleged involvement with dangerous men, her possible ties to clandestine clubs, or even speculation that she lived a double life. Yet, much of this coverage was speculative at best, driven by the public's appetite for scandal and the newspaper's hunger for circulation. The law enforcement investigation faced immediate hurdles. The public scrutiny, fueled by sensational reporting, generated hundreds of false leads. Citizens eager for attention or reward money inundated the LAPD with tips. Men claiming to have dated Elizabeth offered contradictory stories. Others insisted they recognized suspicious neighbors. The victim's popularity soared posthumously, overshadowing the systematic efforts to piece together her last movements. The media relentlessly pursued every rumor, from sightings of Elizabeth at local nightclubs to claims she had fled from a dangerous underworld figure. Meanwhile, detectives tried to trace her final weeks. She was last reliably seen on the evening of January 9th at the downtown Biltmore Hotel, apparently meeting someone. That remained one of the crucial puzzle pieces. Who did she plan to meet, and did that encounter lead to her death? In the days following the murder, a bizarre turn came when someone mailed Elizabeth Short's personal belongings, including her birth certificate, photos, and an address book, to the Los Angeles Examiner. The package, signed with a note from someone claiming to be the killer, reeked of gasoline, presumably to destroy fingerprints. The same entity also made taunting phone calls to newspaper offices, mocking the police's inability to catch him. Yet these leads ultimately went nowhere. The evidence was compromised, and the alleged murder's letters offered no conclusive clues, only more sensational speculation. One of the major theories advanced by investigators involved a suspect with medical or surgical experience, given the precise bisection of Elizabeth's body at the lumbar spine. The cut, known as a hemicorporectomy, was rarely performed, leading some detectives to suspect a physician. Over time, multiple doctors emerged as potential culprits, the most infamous being Dr. George Hodel. Decades later, his own son, a retired LAPD homicide detective named Steve Hodel, claimed to have found evidence linking his father to the murder. Steve Hodel's theories hinged on items like the father's handwriting similarities to the killer's letters and rumored darkroom pictures. Although intriguing, these allegations never formed a legal case. Without definitive proof, Dr. George Hodel and other suspects remained in the realm of speculation. As the case ballooned, L.A. County officials faced mounting pressure from city leaders. The tabloids were filled with wild conjecture. Perhaps Elizabeth was killed by a Hollywood star, or she had overheard a dangerous secret and was silenced. Conspiracy narratives flourished, fueled by the swirl of corruption allegations within the LAPD and local politics. Some stories suggested police officers themselves were covering up for influential individuals. Others proposed that the killer had fled the state or died soon after, ensuring the secret died with him. Meanwhile, Elizabeth's family endured heartbreak, forced to watch her name dragged through the sensational press, overshadowing the memory of her real personality, shy, kind, and anxious for a better life. She became more myth than person, a face on front pages, with her rightful justice slipping further away. In the midst of the mania, Hollywood's golden age shimmered just a few miles from the crime scenes. Opulent movie premieres, glamorous parties, and star-studded nightclubs seemed worlds apart from a grisly murder in a vacant lot. Yet the Black Dahlia story wormed its way into the collective consciousness, hinting at a bleaker side to Tinseltown's glittering facade. Local citizens feared that a sadistic figure roamed their streets. Even as days turned to weeks and years, no definitive suspect emerged. The LAPD pursued more than 150 potential suspects, from petty criminals to big names. None were charged. The trail went cold. Over time, investigators retired or passed on, and files disappeared, lost in the shuffle. By the 1950s, fresh headlines overshadowed the Dahlia murder, though it never truly vanished from public interest. In the decades since, authors, documentary filmmakers, and amateur sleuths have revisited the case with fresh eyes. Each new theory promises the same claim. This time, the killer is definitively unmasked, but each eventually hits the same wall of incomplete evidence and contradictory accounts. Steve Hodel's claims about his father remain among the most widely discussed. Another suspect was Leslie Dillon, a bellhop and would-be writer, who allegedly had suspicious knowledge of the crime. At one point, he was interrogated for days, but eventually released. The paradox of the Dahlia's murder is that there's an overabundance of leads, each tantalizing yet inconclusive. Even ex-FBI agents who dabbled in the puzzle expressed frustration at how so many puzzle pieces refuse to snap together. Why does the public remain enthralled by the Black Dahlia? Partly, It's the shocking nature of the crime itself. Elizabeth's body displayed with such gruesome precision. The savage smile carved across her face resonates as a haunting symbol. The nickname Black Dahlia invites an aura of gothic romance, as if conjuring an L.A. noir novel. Then there's Elizabeth's image, a young, hopeful woman with dark curls and luminous eyes, who sought adventure in the big city. She stands in for every aspiring star who confronted Hollywood's illusions. Her fate underscores a cautionary tale. Behind the glitz, a ruthless city can swallow dreams and lives. Even as we approach the 80th anniversary of her death, that cautionary power remains intact. It's also worth noting the climate of post-war Los Angeles in the mid-1940s. The city ballooned in population. Servicemen returning from World War II blended with starlets chasing the bright lights. Speakeasies evolved into upscale clubs, and studios churned out iconic films. But beneath the surface, poverty and crime festered. The Dahlia murder, some argue, mirrored a communal fear that the city's sunshine and success story masked a raw, violent underbelly. The more the official narrative was muddied by scandal, the more the public suspected someone influential or cunning had orchestrated a grand cover-up. No comprehensive closure ever arrived. That vacuum ensures the case's enduring magnetism. People crave resolution, especially with a crime so brutal. Each year, fresh blog posts, podcasts, or docudramas promise new angles. Historians comb old police archives in hopes of stumbling upon an overlooked piece of evidence. True crime enthusiasts, armed with modern forensic knowledge, dissect autopsy reports from a vanished era. Yet the fundamental question, who killed Elizabeth Short and why, remains maddeningly unanswered. Perhaps the culprit was a lone drifter, now long dead, or a respected socialite with dark impulses, or a doctor with macabre skill. We can only guess. Elizabeth herself becomes lost in speculation. That's perhaps the greatest tragedy. She existed beyond the headlines, an actual person with quirks, faults, and aspirations. She wrote letters to her mother, had crushes, worried about money, and dreamed of seeing her name in film credits. In the end, her memory was hijacked by tabloid sensationalism. Summoning empathy for her real self is challenging, overshadowed by the mythic Black Dahlia, the sensational figure with black hair, dark clothes, a rumored life of danger. But the reality is simpler. A young woman who met an unimaginable end and left behind a riddle that transformed into Hollywood lore. Occasionally, retired detectives or historians suggest new leads. An overlooked piece of physical evidence in an old box, a name on a ledger, a forensic reinterpretation of the cuts. Yet it's improbable that a case from the 1940s will be solved through conventional means. DNA evidence from that era, if it existed, is likely compromised. The culprit, if alive, would be nearing or beyond 100 years old. Realistically, the Dahlia story will remain an icon of unsolved American homicide, a puzzle that reflects the complexities of L.A. law enforcement, media exploitation, and the ephemeral nature of the city's golden dreams. Today, visitors to Los Angeles occasionally seek out the Dahlia's murder site, though the lot has changed drastically over the decades. There's no official marker, just a residential neighborhood that moved on. In vintage-themed tours, guides recount the Dahlia case as part of the city's noir heritage, grouping it alongside other legendary crimes. Tourists snap photos in front of modern bungalows or sidewalks, rarely capturing any actual sense of the dread that once pervaded. But for a moment, they might recall the black and white press images, Elizabeth's face, wide-eyed and hopeful, contrasted with the ghastly final scene. The city has a short memory, ever forging ahead with new developments. But the Dahlia lurks in the shadows, a cautionary legend that won't quite fade away. In the end, the Black Dahlia murder is bigger than its tragic victim or the unpunished killer. It symbolizes Hollywood's dark capacity to exploit tragedy, America's unending appetite for lurid crime stories, and the precarious space where aspiration meets cruelty. Elizabeth Short remains frozen in time, a young face overshadowed by the brutality of her demise. We are left haunted by the knowledge that justice never came. Perhaps that's the final reason the Black Dahlia endures. It holds up a mirror to the failings of institutions, the ephemeral illusions of stardom, and our collective fascination with the darkest corners of fame. We can't help but wonder, could a more just system have saved her? Could a more thorough investigation have found her killer? Those questions yield no easy answers. And so the mystery continues, resonating across decades, reminding us that even beneath bright California skies, dark secrets sometimes remain buried, untouched, unsolved, but never forgotten.